Welcome back to part 5 of our Collaboration Skills Quick Start Guide.
Hi, here are Peter and Sibylla from the Big House Project.
So the topic today is what's in the way of collaborating and cooperating and working together in community.
And you can take these topics also for families. You can take these topics for school classes. You can take them for teams, for working teams, for everything. Barriers to engagement are usually a result of our upbringing, because our brain learns from interactions with other people. And we learn very fast while we are very small. And through our emotions that turn up through interactions with other people.
I think many of us can relate to this, that we come together in the beginning with high ideals and lots of energy in projects, group projects. And then once we start to collaborate, the little frictions come up, and those of us working in this area have to ask what it is those frictions are about. What is my part in it? What capacity do I bring to these relationships?
And as you learned in our last video, all the resolved conflicts build up trust. So working with the barriers to engagement build up trust for the community, build up trust to all the members of the community.
I think if we look around today, we see that there is a theme of disconnectedness in our society in many places. It seems to become somewhat of a norm that we have this rugged individualism that, I deal with things on my own. We've got very good at doing things on our own.
When I came into this country 3 years ago, one of the things that astonished me most were the high fences around the houses. They were so high you couldn't look over them, so it's not possible to have a nice talk with your neighbor. It just shows, keep out. We want to do our own business. Don't mind our business.
In the Big House Project, when we say to people we're talking about building housing co-ops and living more closely under one roof, for instance, we often see a look on people's face that says, really? Fortunately, the psychology and also from business is now beginning to offer some help in understanding what these barriers are about.
I recently came across an article in the Harvard Business Review that was on the topic about what makes a high-performing team. And you can use this high-performing team for high-performing group, for high-performing families, it doesn't matter. The most important thing that was stated there is psychological safety. And there we are back to polyvagal theory again. It also says connecting and belonging. Belonging is connected to be seen and to be heard. It says about authentic communication. Communication that, as I would state it, comes from the heart and not from the brain that says, oh, what is the topic I want to get and what would be the best strategy to do that? That's not authentic. In a high-performing team, we do have a lot of autonomy. So maybe there are some boundaries, but within these boundaries, we can function autonomous.
Autonomy is very important. I think that's one of the things that we often fear that we will lose once we come into community, that we won't find a way to communicate our needs, to get our needs met. So I think that's our calling at this point in human evolution, is to find a way to both belong and to have choice and autonomy. That's the challenge here. The last point was satisfying meetings, that when we come together, these meetings are in a sense a celebration of our work together, that they're not boring, that they're not just for a space for the few to talk, that everyone has a place where they can contribute.
They have to be structured and they have to be really good prepared.
So let's have a quick look at what's involved in becoming a high-performing team. We have the simple model from Ron Freeman. We start from this place of safety in our teams. We come together to work together, but we also connect and relate, in the sense that in some cases our work is one of our biggest community places where we experience community. Many people are working from home during lockdowns are starting to realise this now.
Working from home has advantages, and the connection is missing. Always working from home, or always working on your own, or always being on your own, not in a team, not in a group, on the long run you really miss the connection, because connection is so important for our well-being. To get psychological safety, we have to look at this topic from two places. One is the safety that is provided in the external area, and one is the safety that we provide ourselves internally. When we talk about the external safety, there we can do a lot, providing communication agreements, having rules conflicts in decision-making process, good facilitation. We talked a lot about that in the other firms. And there's this other place. You can create safety within yourself. That means you learn to stay within your corridor of well-being. And you learn to manage upsets effectively.
It's easier said than done. We have to remember that when we are stressed, this triggers very old survival mechanisms. And we talked about fight and flight and shutdown in particular. So we need to create a safe space if we want to encourage interpersonal exploration and discovery, and that involves a certain amount of taking risks if we're going to learn by experimenting, prototyping and making mistakes.
We can't be curious. We can't really learn and innovate when we don't feel safe.
So one of our members gave us this simple model of two icebergs. The part we see of each other when we come together in relationships is the visible part of the iceberg above the water. The part that's underneath is all of our history, is about our expectations and our belief systems, everything we've experienced in our past, which is for the most part unconscious. Given that we are driven quite largely by our unconscious, and given that it's a very fast part of our neurobiology, as we come together in groups, we can benefit each of us from an inquiry into what's lurking there in our hidden beliefs and norms and expectations. Our needs, values, aspirations, they are all often largely unconscious and largely not verbalized.
And as you can see in these pictures, when this unconscious big stuff is lurching around, it keeps you apart.
As you can see from the drawing, that's the part that you sort of bang into first as you try to come closer, and that's where the friction starts. Some of those questions that we might ask: what is it that stops us really connecting? What keeps us apart? Why do we make snap judgments about people?
Why are we so uncomfortable with change? Why are we so uncomfortable with discomfort?
Why do we go to such great lengths to avoid conflict and to feel old pain?
Having to feel the old pain is a real big subject, and people tend to avoid going to that place of old pain.
So if we don't ask these questions and we start to create, for instance, eco-villages, then we tend to produce layouts like this one from Australia. So you can see from the scale, you need a car pretty much to drive from one side to the other, because these houses are so spread out. There is an agenda designed into a layout like this that says, don't come too close to me. I don't know why, but I just need some space.
That's what we often hear when we are talking to people. Oh, I really need my space. What they are really saying, I need the space that no one touches my subconscious, my old pain.
So this is quite a big subject, obviously, but a few ideas about how we can move forward. After we've identified some of these old stories, old core beliefs, we can rewrite them with new stories. That I'm safe in community, that I deserve healthy, good relationships. And the projects that we create will be intimate and successful and passionate and fun.
Rewriting these old core beliefs is quite easy when using energy psychology methods.
And body work, therapies in general, all tend to try to dig out these old stored systems.
Sometimes it just helps learning new pattern just by doing them again and again and again, even if it's not really nice at the beginning.
So learning to build a relationship with our feelings, understanding what our body is telling us, learning to distinguish feelings from emotions, the things that are happening kind of very present and current compared to things that might have been stirred up from the past.
The interesting thing is if things from the present connect to things from the past, it's like waves. Maybe you learned that in physics. When two waves have the same frequency, the amplitude gets higher. So something that happens now that is connected to an old story makes you feel a lot more bad than something that just happens now that is not connected to an old story. And disconnect these two things help to reduce the stress.
As we start to build more supportive relationships and communities, then we start to create new experiences. So that each time we have these positive experiences, we have these feelings of satisfaction and appreciation and compassion and these positive emotions that they build trust and rewrites a new groove in our brain that makes it easier to build on.
Each conflict that is solved successfully helps to build this groove, helps to diminish the anxiety that we usually have when thinking of conflicts. To make all what we said a little bit concrete, there is a story about our relationship. When I get excited, really you can see it, my body starts to move, my voice gets louder, and it's part of life for me.
So for me, raised voices is a trigger from my past. When people raised their voice, there was conflict and anger, maybe associated with violence. That's an example of a trigger. As we become a little bit aware of those triggers, we can start to manage our reactions to them. So when we talk about polyvagal theory, we talk about this green band in the middle as a place where we feel well, where we feel safe, and where we can collaborate and cooperate from. When we fall out of that space, we fall into the orange band first, which is fight and flight. And then when we fall out of that, we shut down and we get dissociated and depressed. And that's the red band. The important thing is that we have an understanding of this model and we can be aware of where we are in this corridor.
And the other thing is, with personal development, we are widening the corridor of well-being. For instance, if we have the core belief, I am not worthy of something, when this core belief is triggered, I don't feel well anymore and fall out of the corridor of well-being. Changing this sentence as I am worthy of this special thing. Then at that moment when this topic turns up, I am not falling out of the corridor of well-being anymore.
I think we naturally, as we do personal development, we have a wider corridor, but it's important to remember that the goal is not to always stay regulated. There are times when we unavoidably become dysregulated. The key there is that we become aware when that happens, because then we can seek help, we can self-manage, we can take the steps that we know to get ourselves back into balance. So I guess if we say that choosing to connect is a choice that we have at this point in history, as we come together to collaborate, we could say, okay, I know that I've had some experiences in my past, but actually I see the benefit of it, and I understand that isolation is hazardous to my health. There's lots and lots of studies show this now, and it's because isolation is an evolutionary danger cue. If we were thrown out of tribe, it was more or less we were left to die. This picture about COVID management, I think in many ways it inadvertently increased anxiety in people, which we know then leads to health outcomes. This is the Harvard longitudinal study. The directors of this 80-year study have all concluded that the number one determinant of adult health was the quality of relationships. Good relationships keep us happier and healthier.
And it doesn't only mean couple relationship, it means all kinds of relationships.
Exactly. So what does connection really look like? I don't think we need to say any more than these pictures really. Children naturally connect. There's a natural joy in connection in children, especially those raised in the third world, where often parenting is more wholesome. A lot of our emotion, our sense of facial expression as we connect really shows the satisfaction and the contentment that comes from being deeply connected. As we really connect, trust is one of the things that we need and gain from being connected. Trust means that we are vulnerable, we're willing to say what we really think and feel, and we're willing to give feedback even if it may be a little bit difficult to do. If it means that we improve the team performance, it is better that we say things with skill and care than to put them under the rug. This model from Patrick Lencioni says that results really, the foundation of it is trust and being willing to be vulnerable.
And vulnerable means taking the risk of feeling pain again, pain of social disconnection.
In another study, Google did quite a famous study of their teams. They wondered why some teams were performing, some teams were not. They spent, I think, 3 years working on this study, and the one major theme that made a difference was the presence of safety in the teams.
The presence of safety means you are allowed to make mistakes because we decided to learn from mistakes. We are not looking for scapegoats.
And simple things like making space for everyone to talk, being sensitive to each other, that we don't put people down and things of that nature. This is one of the key lessons from polyvagal theory, that safety and connection for mammals, which we are obviously, these two things are intertwined and can't be separated. As we try to protect ourselves, if we do that by retreating, then we lose that fundamental source of safety in our life, which is feeling like we belong. We can work together in a team and we can have a sense of satisfaction in achieving things together. This is a difficult message for many of us based on our pasts, but knowing what we do know about neurobiology, then we can start to heal, come out of our shell to realize safety and connection.
That's a picture of celebration. It's from an eco-village in Germany. We had been at that celebration and we just celebrated being together. Celebration is another part of connection. Having good times together, having nice times together. To celebrate the steps we did together, to celebrate small things we achieved together. It's very important.
Dancing on your own is not really quite the same as dancing with a whole bunch of your friends. These eco-villages have a specialty of creating these physical outdoor spaces which they then populate with people and life and lights and music and dance and all sorts of expressions of community.
With this wonderful photo, we want to finish this short collab course and we will go on with some different topics.
In the next video we'll talk a little bit about the metaphor of the big house and what it means to us. That's all for this week, and we'll see you in the next one.
So, see you. Bye.
Bye.